This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I'm in the bubble with Frank Smith. How are you, sir?
I'm good, mate. It's good to have you in the bubble. Welcome back. You said it's the first show you've done since Fury Wilder. I mean, have you enjoyed the break? I mean, you look good. I like the beard.
Do I?
I like the beard. Strong. For those who can't see him, Tebbutt's looking in good form.
Thanks very much, Frank. I will stay behind the camera so that's not proved wrong. I very much have missed it. I haven't enjoyed the break at all, but I'm very, very glad to be here this week. How have you been?
Yeah, I've been, well, it's been strange, hasn't it? Especially when we don't stop normally, and to have 3 or 4 months probably of just spending time in Brentwood in Essex is not quite as enjoyable as flying around the world, I've decided. But no, it was good. It was learnt a lot about what life is like without working a million miles an hour, but it's good to be back, and it's been a busy period and feels like we're not far from the end of the year. And I was looking earlier, by the end of the year we would have done 20 shows between August and end of December, so you know, really pushing off from what we did back in 2019 and trying to get back to it as much as we can within, you know, tough times.
Certainly has been tough times, and credit to yourselves, Matchroom, and also the other promotional companies who have been able to keep boxing alive in some way, shape or form throughout the pandemic this year. But let's talk about this week. Conor Benn returns, obviously not the fight that we anticipated or we were going to have as top of the bill after Dillian Whyte, Alexander Povetkin was postponed, but a real opportunity for Conor Benn to grab the headlines as the headline act.
Yeah, no, for sure, and a real tough test against Benn-Formella. You know, I think the one thing everyone's pointing to is Formella's only loss comes against Sean Porter, who, you know, really is a step on in terms of levels. And Conor, we wanted him to fight earlier in the year on Fight Camp, but we couldn't find the right opponent that he wanted. And when I say right opponent, he wanted a tough test. And at the time, with all the travel bans, etc., we just couldn't find the right person. So to bring Formella in, it's great, and you know, it shows how much he's come on. And he's really ready to step on even further after this. So, you know, he feels like he's going to put in a great performance on Saturday night, and, you know, some big fights on the way for him.
Let's just talk about Benn-Formella. Yesterday and the day before, we were kind of, greeted. It certainly wasn't welcome news that there was potential for him to withdraw from the fight with COVID. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, no, everything's fine. Everything was fine, and you know, there was some potential question on one of the tests, but it all got answered and it was all fine. Went back to our lab and the medical team, and everything was okay. So we're all in a good place. And you know what things are like in boxing. Somehow, within a bubble of only 5 or 6 people, rumours seem to circulate quite quickly. But no, everything's good, and looking forward to the fight. And it's good to have it on.
I think the first I saw of it was the rumours from Mystic Marku, who was talking about, I think the 13th of November was when he first started talking about potential COVID stuff. Did he know something that we potentially didn't, or was that just him looking into his crystal ball?
I think that's him, as with a lot of people on social media, and a lot of boxing fans looking into their crystal balls, you know, seem to know all the knowledge before things have even happened. But no, it's... I think that was him as well, trying to pressure. Are we talking about Florian Marku? I think, yeah, trying to pressure to get him the fight as well. So maybe he was crossing his fingers that something did happen to the main event.
But we are here, and the fight is on. Conor Benn versus Benn-Formella. You make a good point about Sean Porter being the only loss for Benn-Formella. Kind of puts Conor Benn in an interesting position if he comes through the fight on Saturday night. There's a lot of people still calling his name domestically, Florian Marku being one of them, of course. If he beats Benn-Formella this past weekend, does that kind of put him above domestic levels, you think?
I think so. I think that's what he wants as well. That's why he wanted to take this kind of test, because he wants to move himself on now. You know, he's had 4 years. He's had a number of fights. He's built himself up. Tony Sims feels he's ready now. You know, spent a lot of time in the gym with him, and I think this is the right step for him and the right time to do that. And you know, get the win on Saturday against Benn-Formella. Yeah, he is past those guys, and you know, we'll be looking at many bigger fights along the way, I'm sure.
Before we come on to talk about the rest of the card, let's talk about somebody who is not... You can play darts. You're more than welcome. No problem.
You can celebrate everything.
Alan Babich can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say no.
Okay, you're just Alan now. He's not Savage now.
Not the Savage, no?
Okay. So he said I can kick his ass because he's not the Savage.
Yeah, go on then. Let me turn the camera around and you just go and do it.
I think he looks quite relaxed. He's in his flip-flops. I don't really want to get involved. I'll just let him play darts.
We've lost Whyte Povetkin. We've lost Dave Allen. You don't want to be losing Alan Babich from the card as well. Let's talk about Dave.
I'm not sure me doing anything would lose Alan Babich from the card, to be honest.
Well, I don't know. You're an unbeaten fighter.
Me being lost from the bubble may be a little bit better, to be honest. Me over like one of the balconies out there. So.
Dave Allen. Now, he was due to box on this card as well as obviously Povetkin and Dillian Whyte. He's now not. He's retired. Just your thoughts on that? You've worked with him closely over a number of years.
Yeah, Dave Allen is a great character, and I'm quite happy. Well, happy in terms of the fact that he's made a decision he is comfortable with, and no one is better placed to make that decision than himself. So it's good to see a fighter do it at the right time. He's still young, still got a lot of life ahead of him, and he's done well for himself. He's I think his sister and his family have been his sister's been a big part of helping him and taking him on the the right track. He's had tough times, which he's been quite open about, but I think it's it's right for him, and he, as I say, he feels like he's in that place now where enough's enough, and he's made a good decision as far as I'm concerned, because if he feels it's the right one, it's the right one.
Has he been burning up your phone as well as Eddie's with regards to a potential job at Matchroom?
No, I think he will always be welcome to all the shows, and I'm sure if anything ever comes up and he can get involved, for sure, 100%. It was a shame he didn't get the opportunity to have the fight a few weeks ago, but maybe his head wasn't completely in it. I think he's one thing about Dave, he's honest, and I think he sort of feels it's the right time for him. So let's see. I'm sure he'll be around. He's still young, as I said. He's got some good fight. He's got Danny Morrell, who's doing quite well, isn't he? Yeah. He had his pro debut, looked quite good, and I think he's going to enjoy that journey with him. And do you know a story? So the other week when he was supposed to fight on the card, on the Usyk Chisora card, there was Eva Hubmaier who was fighting Ramla Ali, right? Eva Hubmaier ended up having to travel on her own because her team, they got delayed, missed the flight, and they couldn't get here. So during the week, Dave Allen and Eva Hubmaier got to know each other. So Dave would take Eva on the pads. This was when we were starting to realise that Dave's fight may not be happening. Dave was taking Eva on the pads, then went in not in a corner, but in a dressing room on the night, took her on the pads. So he's just a nice guy. He's such a pleasant guy, and he's good to have around, and I hope he is around. Not boxing, because that's not what he wants to be doing anymore, but around in the sport.
Just final one on Dave Allen. It's something that's maybe a better question for Eddie than yourself. Considering the reasons that Dave has retired for, it's not a case of him losing a fight and not having options. I mean, he could have fought this weekend, albeit against a late replacement opponent. Can we rule out him coming back from Matchroom's perspective? Will Matchroom... Essentially, what I'm asking is, are you going to offer him fights in the future now he's retired?
Not now he's retired. If he came back and said and went through everything he needed to come back and said, I want to box again, and actually was serious about it, then you can't really stand in his way. But I don't think he'll do that. I think he's quite headstrong, and he's got it in his head now, and I don't think his heart's in the boxing side, actually boxing. So I don't think he'll come back, but like with any fighter, if they want to take it seriously and are medically cleared, then of course, I'm not saying they can't ever come back, because there's been a number of fighters who didn't come back. You never would have seen David Haye, Tony Bellew, would you? He retired, and he came back and fought Mark Demori and went through all that, and then so I'm sure fighters could come back. Dave's young, but I get the feeling with Dave that we're not going to see that, to be honest.
You know him quite well.
I do know him quite well, yes. I don't think we'll see him again in the ring. If he does come back, then God help the promoter who's on the other end of my microphone when I interview them. So
you won't be happy with it?
I won't be happy with it at all, no. I don't think he should box again. And I've said it to Dave. The first time I told Dave, this doesn't really matter, but the first time I told Dave he should retire was the night he knocked Nick Webb out. Interestingly enough. But let's move on. Another heavyweight, Alan Babich behind you. He's got darts in his hand, so you might want to be a little bit...
Alan Babich is the best heavyweight I've ever seen in my life. And he's unbelievable, and I can't think of anything better to say about him. He's just a hero.
Right, we'll whisper the next bit, just in case.
No.
Great fighter, very action fighter. Action fighter, really, sort of in a similar mold to Dave Allen. He's garnered quite a cult following and a cult support base in a very short space of time. Looking forward to seeing him box against Tom Little this weekend. That's got all the makings of quite a fun fight, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good test for him. He's very early on in his career. Alan's looked great in his previous wins, and he's kept very active, hasn't he? He's back straight out after just over a month out the ring. You look at Tom Little. He's lost 4 stone. So he's taken this seriously. He's coming in there with, he's got a game plan. He knows what he wants to do, and he's not just coming in to roll over. So I think it will be a good test for Alan, and it will show where he's at for sure. Maybe not Alan, maybe the Savage instead, as I understand it, who boxes on the night. Alan just turns up.
Alan just turns up and plays darts, by the look of things. From one Dillian Whyte managed heavyweight, here he comes.
I thought it was a dart. At least I didn't shit myself. At least that was a good clip. I'm the most jumpy person in the world and just had a fist to my head. Yeah, that was just acting. Yeah, that's fun.
That's one for no context Frank Smith. From one Dillian Whyte managed heavyweight to another, Fabio Wardley. You'll have a better grasp of this than most people. What happened with Lucas Brown?
Lucas Brown, there was a lot going on. It was very late in the day, obviously, and Australia, you have to get special exemptions to leave. The travel was very difficult, so it didn't come off, unfortunately. But I do think the Richard Lartey fight is going to be very interesting. Fabio as well, young in his career, and it's a good test for him. I actually watched Richard Lartey against Daniel Dubois, the third round, where they just went hammer and top, just went at it, didn't they? And you forget, he stood up to that. A lot of people would never still be standing after some of those punches landed by Daniel Dubois. So I think it's going to be a tough test, and again, it's going to show where he is in terms of his career, I think, for Fabio. So very exciting. Fabio, again, has built a nice little market of people, especially from his Five Guys comments in the corner. But he's a good guy, and Dillian's got a good stable of heavyweight fighters there, hasn't he?
He certainly has. And before we move on, let's talk about Dillian Whyte. As I said, he was supposed to box this weekend. Alexander Povetkin, COVID, unfortunately.
Someone else was coming in.
Thought another dart was coming over your way. Alexander Povetkin falls victim to COVID. Is January 30th still the tentative date that you're looking at for that in the new year?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. We're just working through it all at the minute. Obviously, with the way things are right now in terms of COVID, planning is a bit more difficult, especially long-term planning. It's quite easy to say in a few days is what we're going to do, but 2 and a bit months, who knows where the world's going to be. But that's the plan for sure. And Povetkin is back recovering from COVID, hopefully all okay that end. So yeah, that's the fight we want to get back. Obviously, that's the fight we're going to do between the two of them.
Moving stateside, yesterday, huge news, Callum-Smith versus Canelo Alvarez. Big surprise to a lot of people. Obviously, some people thought potentially go with Caleb Plant. Callum-Smith ended up with Callum-Smith. Brilliant for British boxing, brilliant for Callum-Smith.
To be honest, at about 1 p.m. yesterday when he posted, "I've got news tonight," I thought he was going for Caleb Plant as well. It was very late in the day, it all got together. But yeah, great fight and great opportunity for Callum-Smith. Callum-Smith shocked a lot of people, I think, when he won the World Boxing Super Series. I personally, because it was very early on in his career, and he's got the opportunity now to go in there against, the pound-for-pound #1 in boxing. When you look at Canelo's resume and what he's done, it's hard to argue that he isn't. So great fight, very excited for that one, and what a way to end the year. It's been a, as we said, a strange year, tough year, but a great way to end the year, and great for boxing as well. That a fight of that magnitude has been made.
Considering kind of the appeal and the hysteria that comes with Canelo Alvarez being arguably the biggest draw in world boxing, how difficult was it to get this fight over the line, along with Callum-Smith, STN Sports, etc.? How was it difficult to get Canelo back in the ring when there's no gate?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we'll work through, he's working through in the US, the plans around what we're going to do in terms of location. But Canelo, I think, he wanted a fight. I think a lot of fighters, they don't... money's important, of course it is. It'd be stupid to say that money is not important to anyone. But I think a lot of these top fighters, they just want to fight and they want to be active and they don't want to sit around. And as well, who knows how long this is going to go on for? Who would have thought back in March we'd be saying we'd be doing shows in November, December in a bubble with no crowd? I think you can't let your career sort of get away from you too much. It could easily be March, April, June next year until we see any sizable crowd. So I think people have just got to get on with things, and I think a lot of fighters are understanding that.
Texas, the front runner for the location?
But yeah, that's the plan currently looking at. So it's a big boxing market. Obviously saw Gervonta Davis fought there a few weeks ago. Had about, I believe, 9,000 people there. So they're a bit more advanced in terms of allowing crowds in. So that's the plan right now.
How big of a coup is it for DAZN to get Canelo Alvarez back on the platform? Obviously, he didn't technically leave DAZN. Obviously, we've seen him back on there, but a huge shot in the arm for DAZN getting him back on the platform.
Yeah, for sure. You know, there was a lot of question marks around the zone during this period as well. You know, a lot of people were saying when the whole case came out about Canelo, Golden Boy, the zone, you know, I can't really talk on the behalf of it. I wasn't involved. But, you know, DAZN have always been big supporters of boxing since they've come into the sport. And, you know, you look at their business as a whole and what they're investing around the world, you know, I don't think there was ever any hesitation around boxing. But obviously people on Twitter, Instagram, they see this news and they think, oh, the whole world's coming to an end. Really, they should be supporting them. For, you know, I think what they've brought to boxing in the last 2 years, especially in the USA, I think they've done a great job. So, you know, I think people should be supporting them, but they're in a good place, and yeah, great for them to have him on the platform.
And just to tie that up, that's exclusive to DAZN in the UK as well, not on Sky Sports, Canelo-Smith?
Yeah, so DAZN have launched their platform globally. That show will be on the DAZN platform. Obviously, you got Anthony Joshua earlier in the month, December 12th, which is on the DAZN global platform, excluding the UK and Ireland. Where obviously with our host broadcast partner Sky Sports. So, you know, it's interesting times. I think with them, you know, investing in the global platform, it's going to be good for the sport of boxing, and you know, we're going to keep. There's going to be some huge events on the way. And
just finally, kind of staying with Canelo-Smith. Staying with them, Ryan Garcia and Luke, no, not yet, they're not coming. Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell, obviously we're waiting for a new date for that after Luke Campbell fell victim to COVID. Any idea as to when that could happen? The 26th of December has been a date that's been floated around for that?
Golden Boy, I believe, are working through it right now with DAZN. Obviously they're promoting the event, so wait and see. Unfortunate with Luke Campbell, but you know, I'm sure we'll get it back on. Great fight, and you know, it's a big test, I think, for Ryan Garcia. It's probably the toughest test he would have faced, for sure. And Luke Campbell, we've seen what he can do. We've seen, you know, his fight with Vasily Lomachenko. We know the level he's at, a great amateur come through. And this is a huge opportunity for him as well. He gets the win against Ryan Garcia. You know, he's there for the world title shots next, for sure.
Okay, well, Frank Smith, always a pleasure catching up with you. Been a while. The last time I spoke to you face-to-face, at least, or in general, was the day after Wilder Fury 2. In Las Vegas, so...
Bloody good memory.
Well, you don't remember speaking to me the day after?
No.
You remember asking me in front of Freddie Cunningham who would win, AJ or Fury?
No. Do you know what? My memory's bad. My memory's shot to bits, to be honest, which isn't good, is it?
You're not even the one who gets punched in the head.
I know, you don't get punched in the head either.
But I remember it.
Yeah, but how much? What else do you remember? What else did you do that day?
Well, I ran around and did a load of interviews. It was the day after a big fight. Frank Warren.
Who else?
Frank Smith.
Yep. I know what else I did. I laid by the pool for a couple of hours that day at the MGM.
Well, I'm glad that was more memorable than our time spent together, Frank.
It was a good time that we spent together, and I apologise that my memory isn't very good, but unfortunately 8 months ago feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? Especially with everything we've gone through.
It certainly does, and hopefully we don't have to wait 8 months before we do this again.
Hopefully not. And I will remember this even if it is 8 months from now.
Frank Smith, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social.
Just delete the clip where I shit myself when Babich, you know, came over with his fist.
Yeah, don't worry, Frank, I got you.
Definitely be gone, won't it? Yeah.